Hello everyone, Gizmo here, hope you're having a wonderful day. And having just seen Thor Love and Thunder, here is my non-spoiler review. And please note that I'll still reference some things that were present within the trailers, so keep that in mind, like goats, some returning characters, and the muscular gods that bear it all, butt cheeks included. And after 4 years of waiting for Thor to return after his climactic end with the events of Endgame, it was just nice to see Chris Hemsworth return as the titular God of Thunder. Yes! As well as some other MCU mainstays that we have come to know and love over the years. And coming from the directive mind of Taika Waititi, Thor Love and Thunder continues to carry the comedic approach on from its predecessor movie, Thor Ragnarok, for better or worse. And this time doubling down as a romantic comedy, as Thor comes to grips with who he is, and I've got to be honest, the comedy in this one, although containing a few noteworthy gags and one-liners here and there, like the whole Mjolnir gag and Stormbreaker, it just didn't hit the same way that Ragnarok did for me with regards to the journey of the story, as it felt like the comedy for the most part was just present for way too much of the film, and it really just got in the way of the charm and heart of the film this time around. Most noteworthy are the goats themselves, because although fun at first glance, their screams were just way too much for me. I now believe it when Chris said in an interview that this film is like it was put together by a 7-year-old. And yeah, it did feel like it, especially when considering the goat screaming. I mean, imagine just trying to talk and it's obnoxious, not really funny, and it just completely disrupts the entire pace for one cheap gag. Yeah, that's what it was like watching the film. And I chuckled the first time, but after the third instance, the goat's novelty was just completely lost, not only on me, but the rest of the theatre as well. Especially when considering that they actually crop up a lot more times than just 3 in the film.
They also scream quite a lot.
And I would love to see the version of the film that didn't feel like it needed to soak itself in that much comedy, since it didn't always complement the story and just felt like comedy for the sake of comedy. Especially considering that most of the jokes just didn't land at all, and it just felt like it was trying to run off of Ragnarok's gas without necessarily having the right parts to fuel that engine. Now, considering its 2-hour runtime, Thor Love and Thunder does cover a lot of ground really fast, and despite its messy first half due to just the over-reliance of comedy in most cases, it does manage to find its feet in the second half of the film, and even manages to engage on some heart-tugging story beats. However, this just felt like an attempt to make up for the lukewarm start of the first half of the film. The pacing improvements just come much too late into the runtime, that there's just not that much left for Thor Love and Thunder to offer. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible film by any means, but it definitely hinders its own narrative with putting comedy first. But despite this, the characters are really well executed. Christian Bale completely stole the show with his performance of Gore, and in fact, his scenes just captured me by his performance alone. And without spoiling anything, he really took the film to terrifying places and was literally the saving grace for Thor Love and Thunder. And it's great to see that even after the massive threat of Thanos, that Marvel can continue knocking it out of the park with their villains, even if the rest of the film does fall a little bit flat. Saying that though, Thor himself goes under quite a transformation towards the start of the film, with Hemsworth getting to display the full might of Thor's muscular physique, showing many sides of his personality from his arrogance all the way to his cheekiness as he bears all to see. Now, this one will definitely be a must for the ladies and men that are just Hemsworth lovers when they catch Thor's buttocks in full view, which I suppose it's been 14 years in the making since his topless debut in the original Thor film. But still, I never thought that we would actually get to see naked Thor in the MCU. I suppose anything is possible when you wait for it. So with that said, She-Hulk anyone? Let's just wait and see if the MCU just continues to double down on things. And even characters like Thompson's Valkyrie and Korg just make a solid run in this film by adding the best parts of humour possible alongside Thor's running Mjolnir joke. So Korg fans can rejoice that we get to spend more time with the beloved Cronin. And I will also note that Natalie Portman did a fantastic job with her return as Jane Foster, as she debuts as the Mighty Thor. And I really loved the dynamic between her Mighty Thor and Thor, as they took their characters just to new heights since that ending in Dark World. And even if it did bring with it this rom-com trope of the ex being back on the scene, and despite my criticism with some of the use of comedy throughout the movie, the rom-com elements were some of the best executed parts of storytelling, with comedy mixed throughout Love and Thunder. And they complement each other really well, and don't worry, she doesn't steal Thor's thunder, in that this never stops feeling like a Thor film. And characters from the Guardians of the Galaxy do make a return in the film, following the end leaving with Thor back in Endgame. And it's not a spoiler, since they were in the trailer. It is nice to see them again, however they really do just take this back burner of a seat, considering that this is a Thor film. I do feel like they are worth mentioning, because the aesthetic of Thor Love and Thunder does just scream 80s rock album cover. To me, that feels more like this Star-Lord kind of inspiration, just rubbed off on Thor, even so far as Thor mimicking his style. And they even follow this up in the credits with a tag that says featuring the Guardians of the Galaxy, similar to that you would find on an album cover if another artist featured in another artist's album. And I just thought this was really cool, on top of the sound design of the various rock music heard throughout the film. So yeah, the comedy, although not great, there are some positives to have in Thor Love and Thunder. And the effects themselves were great, even if a little bit wacky at times. But even so, I'm impressed in how the visual effects were just put together in order to play complement to certain areas of the comedy. Honestly, these are the parts where the comedy just hits right. And after the past 3-4 films, I did enjoy seeing Love and Thunder just allowing Thor to visit the more cosmic side of the MCU, rather than just being stuck on Earth. And as always, Marvel's VFX team just excels in just creating these new little areas and worlds within the MCU. And most notably was Zeus's Citadel City. I can't remember what it was called off the top of my head. But as much as I despise the screaming of the goats, I really can't say anything bad about the VFX side of things. And on top of that, the VFX team really just pulled it together and just created something new with some of the different worlds. So best of all for me was just the black and white filtered world, and I'll just leave it at that without giving too much away, since this is a non-spoiler review. And Love and Thunder, despite its heavy focus on comedy, manages to encompass other themes such as love, death and revenge. And when they fully embrace these themes, it really excels the film's story just to new heights, which for me really helped drive home the narrative in the later portion of the film. But if you're looking for the next best progression of the MCU, then sadly Thor Love and Thunder just isn't it. Although I will say it's refreshing with regard to the multiverse that Marvel is still equally grounded to exploring these individual character stories and journeys as well, as not everything needs to have this grand consequence to the overarching universe within the MCU. And as always, in a Marvel flick, there are 2 post-credit scenes to Love and Thunder, and both of them are really cool. So yeah, you know the drill. When you go to watch the film, just watch the credits. I promise you, these post-credit scenes are much better than waiting the end credits in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. But that's not saying much, is it? Overall, although Thor Love and Thunder does have some really cool ideas and excels in the overarching stories and journeys of the characters, it doesn't always leave itself a lot of room to breathe away from the comedy. And whilst this worked really well for Ragnarok, I definitely feel like Love and Thunder just needed a different set of pace with regards to the comedy, considering the darker undertones and certain story beats that it decided to tell. And it just resulted in a very choppy first half. But if you can get past that, then the rest of the film definitely opens up and makes up for it, because when the film does give itself time to breathe and really live in those emotional, heartfelt moments, it holds up. There's just not a lot of them. And I feel if Thor Love and Thunder had just relied less on the comedy, it would have held up more as a film than it currently does. And I must admit that I had my expectations up a little bit higher than I usually would, just considering how much I loved Ragnarok, and that this was being directed by Taika as well. However, Love and Thunder just does feel lukewarm at most when considering its predecessor. Even though Jane's Mighty Thor doesn't steal the god's thunder, the comedy definitely grounded it. And if I was to rate this film, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10 at most, just due to its over-reliance on the comedy, since that's really all the movie is. It's a comedy. and it just really fails to capture the same comedic charm as Ragnarok. Thor Love and Thunder does have a lot to offer in terms of its story, however it just doesn't stick the landing. It pains me to say that the only real saving grace of this film, and maybe perhaps a reason to bump up my score just a little bit if I'm being generous, would be Christian Bale's gore, because I rate his performance like a 12 out of 10, but I don't feel like using him as a way to bump up the score is fair on anyone, especially the film. So if you're going to watch Love and Thunder, then gore is definitely the highlight. Anyway, that's my review on Thor Love and Thunder, and I just wanted to know, have you seen Thor Love and Thunder yet, or are you still waiting to go? And if you have seen the film, let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments down in the comment section below. And just be wary of spoilers, since this is a spoiler-free review. But other than that, like and subscribe if you love Thor. And I hope you continue to have a lovely day. And I'll see you around.